Hey guys, I'm Jill. Welcome back to Whispering Willow Farm. This evening I'm in my high tunnel just kind of putting eyes on everything. I was out of town this weekend. One of the first things I do when I come home is check on animals and check on the gardens. And so I was out here this evening and thought, you know what? I have been horrible at garden tours this summer, but I'm about to change that. So I'm going to show you guys what is going on in my high tunnel. We've been getting asked a ton of questions about high tunnels, where our high tunnel came from, do I love it, pros and cons. So I'm going to kind of hit on that throughout showing you guys because we are in a massive transition season. So we had overwintered flowers in here. We have officially ripped up all of those and we are about to start switching gears and really ramping up for the fall and winter garden, which is when we actually grow majority of our food. And we're able to do that largely because we are growing in a high tunnel. So this high tunnel came from Grower Solutions. It was here when we bought our farm. There are things I do and don't like about it, if I'm being honest, and I think that's going to be an entirely separate video of like just diving into the structures of the tunnels. There are a few people that I do really like how their high tunnels are designed, but I will go ahead and in the description link this one from Grower Solution. Bootstrap Farmers has some really good ones, and then Farmer's Friend also has some good ones as well. The specs on my high tunnel, it is a 20 by 50. We have got 6 raised beds in here, so we have 2 longer beds on the outside and then 4 smaller beds on the inside. So let's get started. Hope you guys are ready. I am going to be spitting out varieties, so if that is something you're curious about, make sure you've either got your phone around, maybe a notepad and a pen. But the majority of everything that is growing in our high tunnel right now is a hybrid greenhouse variety, and as I'm kind of showing you guys, I'll touch on that and let you know why it is that we're growing those, and kind of just my experience with those. So without further ado, welcome to my BFF for the summer. We have named this the 4 Seasons High Tunnel, thanks to a lovely viewer who recommended that. So welcome to the 4 Seasons. Over here we have Bert the banana that's doing really well, and honestly doing super well considering it doesn't get a lot of water at all. So this thing just thrives. And let's just start with our peppers. Alrighty, so here we have the Carmen sweet pepper. So let's see if I can show you guys a few different ways. So it starts off small like this and green. Oh, here's one. It'll even get bigger and green, but it's actually not ready until it turns red like this. And you can see this whole plant over here. This is really good in a lot of different things. You can just, it's like very similar to a bell pepper. But I actually chopped some of this up and put in curry, and it was nice. We have these all pruned to a single liter. You guys can see here behind me. And then we have these compostable clips, is how that they're trellised on there with this jute twine. And so they are growing pretty tall. And we just go through and we clip these once a week. We have been getting quite a few off of here, but gosh, I mean, these plants are just absolutely loaded with these peppers, so we definitely need to be harvesting a bunch of these. Alright, so this is my first year growing this Carmen. I'm going to go ahead and yank one off. Growing this Carmen sweet pepper. So like I said, we were really trying to shift to greenhouse hybrid varieties because that is what is going to thrive in a greenhouse. And what does that mean, right? So let's talk about that for a minute. Greenhouse varieties are typically always hybrids, which means they are a cross, right? They've been crossed to find the best traits of either parent plant to create the hybrid plant. But one, they do really well with like high humidity, which is often what you're going to find in a high tunnel. They're very disease resistant, so as we're walking through, you're not going to see a lot of disease. Now we are dealing with aphids in a large way, and we've got BT and neem and a prebiotic all mixed up that we're spraying once a week, which I'm going to be doing a high tunnel maintenance video, and that's all that information is going to be in there. So for me, since I hadn't really grown a ton of hybrids in the past, because when I hadn't really needed to, right? These varieties grown out in your raised bed are not going to perform like they would in a high tunnel, because these varieties have literally been crossed and created to withstand the conditions in a high tunnel, and they thrive, as you guys can see behind me. And so what I did is I went through and I wrote down at the beginning of the season everything that I would have grown out in my raised beds, and bell peppers were on there. So I found something comparable that was like a bell pepper, that was going to be a greenhouse variety, high production, disease resistant, humidity tolerant, and that's what I decided to grow. And so the Carmen was recommended to me by a market farmer, and that's what I did, and they are doing great. So like I said, we'll use these just like we would a bell pepper. We have been cooking these and using them. They're great. One of the lovely things too is like our peppers, like our first round of cucumbers starting to die out. We've already got a couple waves of tomatoes, but now we're able to be starting those things again while our peppers are really just starting to shine, and we will have peppers, or we could have peppers in here until like November, maybe even December. Last year it was like mid-November we were still harvesting peppers, and that was really, really cool. So Carmen sweet pepper, love it. It is ripe when it turns red, and yeah, they do really great. Now you do not have to grow these on this single leader, so you can just grow them and they can just be bushier. However, for us, it's easier just to trellis it all, and they will produce more, right? Because if you just had this bushy little plant and you didn't prune it to where it kept growing, you're just going to have the squatty plant. It's going to probably produce a whole bunch, and then that's probably it. Versus we've got this, we're teaching this to trellis all the way up, so we're literally going to have peppers for a long time. Alright, so something that I wanted to do, mainly just for comparison, for teaching purposes, we did this pepper here that we had pruned to a single leader, and we've got it clipped to the jute twine with these compostable clips. But then over here we've done something a bit different. We're letting these get bushier. We've just got some rebar in here, and then we've actually just got some tomato twine, which we've wrapped around to kind of just keep it all in here and condense. You can see these are not near as tall as those are, and they will not. They're just going to stay squatty and bushy. We've not pruned any of these, so like this one pepper plant has got a leader here, a leader here, a leader here. I mean, this thing's just wild. And it's still producing, but it's not going to produce as much, and it's just not as clean, right? So if you're walking in here and you can just see how orderly that is, this is a bit more wild, but that's okay. It was mainly just a comparison to see the yields. So you can see we do have quite a bit of aphid damage. So I have been seeing some ladybugs in here. That is great. We actually do not buy any ladybugs and bring them in. Typically if you do that, and if you have done that in the past, no shame, we have too. But a lot of times you'll hear people say, oh man, I bought all these ladybugs and within a day or two they were gone. And that's because they're not native to you. And so if the ladybugs are here because they have found the food to feed off of, they're going to stay here. And so typically that is just what we do. And we do find better just success with just like those beneficial nematodes coming themselves. But like I said, we are putting together a mixture that we're spraying on these weekly of neem, BT, and a prebiotic for our soil. So we're managing, they're managing the problem. So these are the sprinter peppers, and they're starting to put some on. You guys can see here. These are some of our hot pepper varieties. These are things for like, we want to make some chili powder and some hot sauces and things like that. Here we have the red ember, which will turn red when it's ready. Obviously a very hot pepper. One of the bad things about this type of trellising is you can see it's already blown over. So you do have to just be mindful of that. Like I said, it is a bit wilder approach to gardening. So these are putting on quite a bit though. I'm not noticing that we're not having good yields on it, but we did plant these a little bit later than we did those over there, so that's to be expected. And then down here we kind of have them in these different blocks. Here is our shishito pepper, which happens to be my absolute favorite pepper to grow and to eat. So there we've got the shishito. So good. We have been harvesting off of these, and it's really funny too. So the shishito peppers, even though it's all in the same bed, these have absolutely no aphids. I mean, literally not a single aphid. The leaves are just like this really deep green. They look great. Even this variety, the ember's not horrible. But then when we move down here to the sprinter, you guys can see just how massive the aphid damage is, which I do think is crazy. You see all that? Alright, so this whole bed will be primarily, aside from the shishitos, we are gonna definitely be eating the shishitos fresh, blistered. I think I just talked about this in my last vlogs. One of my favorite summer garden staples is just like some shishitos just tossed in a cast iron with some good, like, butter. It's just amazing. But a lot of these are going to be for like chili spices, hot sauce. We're going to be preserving a bulk of this, which is something that we haven't typically done in the past. Now that we have our freeze dryer, we're really wanting to experiment with a lot of seasonings, because that is something that we are going through a lot. We season a lot. Nathan loves to be in the kitchen cooking, and so in those, you know, winter times, we're doing lots of soups, we're doing lots of chilies, stews, and so usually, you know, curries, things like that. If we can throw in some of our own spices, we just thought that would be really cool. So here we have our eggplant. So Trevita is the variety. We do have an eggplant. We have been harvesting eggplants, so this is probably like the fourth one. It's not ready yet. It does taste really, really good though. And we also have these just on jute twine, and what we do is as the plant grows, up, we're just wrapping it around the twine here. Alright, so there are a few reasons why I've never grown eggplant. One, I never grew up eating eggplant. Eggplant wasn't something Nathan loved, so when we got married, it wasn't, you know, a vegetable we were eating a lot of. It wasn't until I became plant-based that a lot of the recipes I was looking started, you know, incorporating eggplant. And I thought, well, you know, if I'm gonna be like buying it, I'll go ahead and try it. But then, gosh, probably my early years of you know, gardening, I grew eggplant, and Nathan was like, I don't really like it, don't grow it. So I grew it 1 year, have not grown it since then. But any of my friends who grow eggplants local to us, I mean, the Japanese beetles are just so bad that usually they don't even yield a bunch. And we do have, you know, the farm stands, which is a locally sourced grocery store near me. So for me, I kind of weigh the pros and cons. If it is going to be a major pain in the butt and you're going to not yield a lot, is it worth it to just buy it? And so that is something that I did grow it this year to give it the benefit of the doubt, to see how it would do in a tunnel. But I do not know that I will be growing the eggplant again, because it is by far the one thing in the tunnel that is just getting destroyed by the pests more than anything, even more than the peppers. We are treating it regularly, but we almost can't even keep up, because for some reason the pests are just so attracted to the stinking eggplant. So it's been cool growing. It has been cool. We've just been cutting it open, throwing some olive oil and some spices and roasting it. I did chop it up and bake it and put it in with an Indian cuisine I did one night. So, you know, really diverse as far as what you can do with it. Just don't know that it's worth it. Alrighty, now we have our Katrina cucumbers, which have been in for a while. We have seriously just been fermenting and eating so many fresh pickles. You guys can see there's a bunch, and it goes all the way to the top. And then when you get to the top, we just kind of let it umbrella out and it'll fall back down. So these have done really well. We are now starting to see where they are like ready to come out. We've had these in here for quite a while. We did know we were going to do successions on these too. And now that they are so high, so we've got fruit way up there, I do have to keep a ladder handy with me so that I can just harvest these. I mean, yeah, there's literally cucumbers way at the top here, but these are a hybrid variety. They yield an abundant amount of food. So this week we are starting another round of these. I did start a round a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, we were having issues with our well. We ended up having to get our well and our pump replaced. And so not having access to the greenhouse, everything that I started died. And I tell you that because, hi, I'm Jill. I have been growing food for over 10 years. I wrote a book about growing food. I have a YouTube channel about growing food. Like, that is what my job is encouraging and teaching people to grow food. And I still kill seedlings. So be encouraged. You do not have to master it all. You're still going to have plants die. You're still going to have seedlings die. You're still going to have pests in your garden. And guess what? That is totally okay. So I just encourage you guys, learn through the process. Don't beat yourself up too much. just, you know, buy more seeds, start again, especially if you're succession seeding. That is something we have been growing a large amount in these soil blocks, and that's something that when I start my next wave, I'm going to take you guys with me. I'm actually not going to be doing the soil blocks in the summer because they just dry out so quickly. So while I do love them when I'm starting seeds in January and February and March, this time of year I cannot keep up with watering them enough before they dry out and die. So that is something to be mindful of too. Maybe really consider the containers that you are using. But these are the Katrina cucumbers. They are a hybrid variety. The really cool thing about them is that they actually self-pollinate. They produce no male flowers, only female flowers. And then the female flowers produce enough hormone, which is actually what produces the fruit. So we have our walls open on our high tunnel. So we have bees coming in here pollinating. Everything gets pollinated. But a lot of times what you'll see with these commercial greenhouses or these market gardeners, they'll have like insect netting down their sidewalls so that nothing can come in and they do not have to worry about either like a cross-pollination situation or they just want to keep everything out like pests. They don't want moths to come in and lay eggs. And so that is one way that they can kind of control the elements of their greenhouse. For me, I love seeing the occasional bee in here. You know, we're not saving the seeds from any of these. We're not having to worry about anything like that because they are a hybrid variety. So I just know that the pests are going to come. That is part of gardening. If you have a perfect garden, you just wait. It's not going to be perfect for too long. So I don't really worry about that. But the good thing about the Katrina cucumbers is they do thrive really well. But know that you're going to get a massive, huge wave. And then more than likely, you're going to need to have another round ready and planted. So when this one dies out, we'll have another spot ready just to plant more. And we'll just kind of keep that succession going for at least the next few months. Then we have this little bed which doesn't have a lot planted in it. These are actually seed potatoes. So we did this experiment last year. We started the varieties Clancy. We started these potatoes from seed just to see if we can do it. And we didn't really have a lot of success. So we tried it again this year. And lo and behold, they are coming up now very, very slow. Like, I mean, these things have taken a minute. But we don't actually need the bed space right now, so we're just keeping it in here. And then Nathan had bought me some just like purple potatoes and just some gold potatoes. And then I totally forgot about them, but then I found them this past week and I threw them in here and I can see there's already little buds starting to form. So I just took that and kind of filled in spaces. We do have some hot peppers down here I'll show you, but then this space is completely empty. And then where all of our snapdragons were, we ripped all of those out. And here we've got ginger. So we grew ginger in a large way last year. We yielded, I think it was like 97 pounds of ginger. So that's what we have going all the way up here. And then these are the ahi peppers. And they are just these tiny little yellow peppers that will light your butt on fire. They were super, super fun to grow last year. And so we saved the seeds from them. And we just got this little block here with those. So a fun little fact about the ahi peppers is actually, I think, the world's most expensive pepper. And at first, when I knew these facts and I planted them last year, I was like, so crazy, like, how is this? Well, then I was actually doing a vlog. I'll try to find the video and link it up here, and I'd try a bite of one of those things. And you guys, I cannot even express to you the fire that took place in my mouth. And so then I realized, oh, this is why, because you can literally sell like hardly any, but since they're so pungent, I can see why chefs, that's who people are selling them to, will pay top dollar for them, because they could literally put like 2 of these little peppers in all their curry and it's enough spice. There's so many different things, so versatile. And so we're not selling any of them. The plan is to make hot sauce, make all the different things. And honestly, it was just really, really fun to grow that pepper last year. We didn't eat it a ton, which is why we're going to try to preserve it this year so that we're not growing just for the sake of growing. We're actually able to use it and preserve it. But we did think that would be a great one to put in some different spices and to make some hot sauce out of. So our plan for all of the voided spaces is we really haven't stressed out that much about it, because obviously, you guys, we're not lacking food. And so that is something that I do want to take a second and just encourage you guys. Don't plant just for the sake of planting. Now, I can walk in my high tunnel and see where I've ripped up overwintered flowers, and my mind tells me, oh, Jill, that needs to be full. You've got empty space. You need to be growing food. But then I can look and I can see that I am growing food. I'm growing an abundant amount of food, and I don't want to overload myself. I want to make sure that I have enough time to preserve the harvest, whether that is fermenting pickles, whether that is canning tomatoes, making salsa, making diced tomatoes, freeze drying, whatever it is that I'm doing. If I were to plant all of this just so there were no empty spaces, more than likely I would be overrun. I would be feeding a lot of food to the pigs, and we do still have some food growing in the raised bed garden. Not anything like what's out here. The raised bed garden is primarily flowers, but don't just plant something for the sake of thinking you need to. Make sure that you are eating or utilizing all the food that you're currently growing, and right now I'm still trying to get a handle on that. So once we have a few more rounds of the tomatoes canned and put on the shelf, then that's when I'll start thinking about doing these little, you know, succession of root crops, which we'll do another round of carrots, we'll do beets, we'll do radishes, we'll do spinaches and lettuces and things like that, and we'll just keep rotating that out probably throughout the fall. All right, but now here's my tried and true, these beautiful, lovely tomatoes behind you. Now, they desperately need a haircut. So typically, we are going through once a week and we are clipping. I mean, when I say clipping, we're taking the compostable clip and we're clipping the tomato vine to the jute vine. We're doing that once a week and we're pruning. Last week, I didn't get to that, so some of these have the plants fallen over because I haven't clipped it. That's okay. And then you're going to notice that we are starting to see our first little bit of discoloration and kind of disease-like stuff on the leaves, but that is my fault because I am usually pruning. I'm pruning heavily, and that is to allow better airflow because we are growing in a high tunnel. It is very hot and humid. It is good to prune. We do have our shade cloth on, so I don't have to worry about these getting scorched by the sun or anything like that. So this is a little bushier than I prefer, but this is also real life, and I'm just going to show you guys what it looks like today. And today, everything needs a little bit of a haircut. Alright, so I have talked about this before, but early on when we had started these in the greenhouse, we had topped them. So when you have your plant and it's had its first 2 leaves, I clipped the top, which then forced this plant to make 2 main leaders. So this is a 2-leader system, and each leader, you can see we have clipped here, produces fruit. So we have harvested a lot off of the bottom, but then we've got a ton of these clusters. And man, if you guys look, they just keep going all the way up. So they go on that side, and then we turn and we come down and we have so much fruit. You guys can see we've got green fruit, we've got fruit that's almost ripened, and then we can come down here and we've got fruit that is ready to come inside and be eaten. So this is the Rebelski. It is a hybrid variety. It is super, super meaty, like tastes like everything you would think a tomato should taste like. There's not really any sweet notes. I mean, it's just like acidic. Definitely just like if you're looking for a good beef steak style, this has been really good. And you guys can see here, I mean, if y'all caught my video last week, you saw how many tomatoes we harvested. And now I need to come through and do this all over again. So much fruit. We've got the 2 leaders. They go all the way up. Once they get to the top, they will actually just take our pruners and cut them. But yeah, they're producing so many. Check out that cluster. That's insane. So here we have our cherry tomatoes. This is a variety called Sakura. Very meaty. We actually diced a bunch of these and canned them the other day. But what they do is just like you'd seen here. We've got these, we've already harvested off of these, but just these massive clusters, and you can just go through and cut the entire cluster. So you can kind of see one happening here. So we'll just wait until they all ripen, come up here, cut it off. Makes it super easy. Alright, and then the same on this side. We've only got the Sakura, which is right here. And again, we've got the Rebelski. I mean, there is just so much fruit, you guys. just clusters and clusters. Now you can see this is the disease I was talking about, and it's just because I need to go through and just trim all of this off. This one's a lot more open, and it's just doing so well. Wow. You guys, I cannot get over this. Look at that. So all I'm doing with these is the pruning of the lower leaves every week. Taking the compostable clips and clipping the actual plant itself to the twine, and then I'm going through and removing suckers. Now we are so tall that I am having to get a ladder out and move it down and do this. I do know market gardeners who use stilts, however I'm definitely not that skilled. And while we do not have a large array of variety, we've got the Sakura and the Rebelski. It's just, they've been so productive, and I've been able to use them for a lot of different things. So we made the diced tomatoes, I made fresh salsa. I'm going to take some of these, and even though they're not a paste tomato, they're super, super meaty, and I am going to do some sauces with them. And so in the past, I come from just like really heirloom driven, right? And I think there's a place for heirlooms. I think it's so special to grow heirlooms, but just really learning that, I mean, I ended up having heirloom tomatoes out in the raised bed garden, have not put on one thing yet. They've got disease really, really bad. They just don't produce like these greenhouse varieties will. And so for me, that's kind of been a game changer. Why would I have this beautiful space and not really utilize it? Why would I put more work on myself than I have to? And for me, growing in a high tunnel like this has honestly just been a dream of mine, and this really is a dream come true. I love being down here. I'm drawn to this. It allows me to put in those efficient systems and just be productive minded and production driven. We are, you know, counting yields of all of this stuff. For me, that is what just fills me up. And for you guys, it may be different. It may look like growing that heirloom out in the raised bed. It, you know, for me, it is that, you know, squash growing on an arch trellis, like that fills me up. But this is really where I feel like I've just kind of come into my own and just started shining, and I love it. I've absolutely loved it. If you want to know where I got any of these seeds, I'll put a link down below, but all the seeds in here came from Johnny's, and I do get some feedback on that, like, oh my gosh, these varieties are so expensive. And while they are expensive, they're going to yield me so much that it is definitely worth it in my opinion. So I know the Katrina cucumbers are about 10 bucks a pack, but if I think about how many cucumbers I'm getting from that pack of seeds, and you do the math, it really does make a lot of sense. So one thing that I am going to tell you guys, just in full transparency, I have loved growing the slicers, the Rebelski. I'll probably always grow those, and the Sakuras have been incredible. I am missing color. I'm missing color. I'm used to growing, you know, gosh, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I was growing 70 different varieties of heirloom tomatoes, and that was, you know, slicers and cherry tomatoes. So I am missing just some of the color. So one thing I'm going to be doing and taking notes of is what are some different greenhouse cherry tomatoes that are maybe, you know, pinks. Maybe they are some oranges or some yellows that just add pops of color when we're cooking, and even just to come in here. When you're in here working all day, I like it to be beautiful. I want to create a space that I want to come to. And so those are things that I prefer, and even though I am extremely production driven, I know that if I don't tend to myself and I don't create a space that I want to come to, then I'm not going to come to it. And so I would encourage you guys, this is what's working for me. If you think, oh my gosh, the idea of growing a hybrid, I don't ever want to do that, don't do it. Do whatever's going to make you tick, whatever's going to put a smile on your face and bring joy to you, and it's going to keep calling you to come to the garden when it's 100 degrees and you're sweating your butt off. Grow that thing, do that thing. And that's the beautiful thing about each of us. We're so unique. And we get to really create gardens, and we get to create our farms and our homesteads based off of what fills us up. And I love that, because I can go to someone else's farm or view their garden, and they do things totally different. And it doesn't mean it's wrong. It means they are catering to, one, what they want to eat, aesthetically what they're trying to achieve. And I do think that that's something really cool, and it's just what makes us all super unique. So thank you guys for hanging out with me today. As I showed you what is growing in my high tunnel, I am going to take the camera off and kind of do a little bit of a time lapse with some beautiful music. You guys can just hang out and watch it, but thanks for hanging out with me. I'll talk to you soon.